Hey, everybody, welcome to the Grow Yourself podcast. I'm your host, Kevin McNulty, and this is your personal development school of growth, where each week my guests and I will bring and break down big ideas and practices that will help you learn, grow, and succeed in life. Thanks for checking us out. Now let the growth begin. Hey, everybody, welcome back to another episode of Grow Yourself podcast, your personal development school of growth. I was thinking the other day, actually, I've thought about this a lot, how easy it is to get motivated. And that's with a caveat, of course, but how hard it is to stay motivated. I've had days where I just felt like I was on fire, getting it all done, crushing my goals. And then other days where I just, I mean, almost couldn't get off the couch, just felt impossible to get started. But here's what I found over the years. That people who win in the long term aren't just the most talented, they're, more or less the most disciplined, you know, it, with or without motivation. And that's the big key that, they just show up whether it's exciting or not. And that's what today's guest, my special guest, Dre Baldwin, has mastered. He turned a walk-on college basketball career into 9 years as a pro. He built also while he was a pro, built this personal brand that's all about discipline, confidence, and basically showing up every single day. And so if you've ever struggled to be consistent or wondered, what does it really take to perform at a high level consistently? Well, Dre's about to break all this down, and I mean way down. And so that is my guest, Dre Baldwin. He went from riding the bench in high school to signing the first contract of a 9-year professional basketball career, all in just 5 years. While playing overseas, Dre became really a pioneer in personal branding, launching what I would call a content empire before it was even the norm. He began blogging in 2006 and publishing to YouTube and blogging in 2005 and then publishing to YouTube in 2006, eventually producing over 8,000 videos for, wait for it, 130,000 subscribers with more than 73 million views. So, Dre is the host of the Daily Work on Your Game podcast, the Daily Work on Your Game podcast masterclass with over 1,700 episodes and 3 million downloads, where he teaches mindset tools of discipline, confidence, mental toughness, and personal initiative. He's delivered 4 TED Talks. No, that's not one, two, or three. That's 4 TED Talks, authored 29 books. It may be more than that by now. Tomorrow, I'm sure it will be, and worked with brands like Nike, Gatorade, Finish Line, Wendy's, Buick, just probably to name a few. So he's originally from Philadelphia and a graduate of Penn State. Dre now lives in Miami. And so I would like to just welcome my special guest. And really, I don't know him that well, but I've got this really great thought that he's a really good guy as well. So, Dre Baldwin, thank you so much for being on Grow Yourself.
Oh, Kevin, I'm really excited to be here. Thank you for that introduction. And I will say that last part, I know you're right about. Now, the rest of it, we'll see if I can live up to it.
Well, there's no doubt in my mind. I've watched a few of your videos, and I mean, you you lay it out there pretty not just confidently, but it's kind of like, and this, when you come across, a fellow speaker, fellow podcaster, let's say a thought leader, you can quickly pick up on it because basically you know what you're talking about as you talk about it. And so, and you don't read a bunch of scripts and all these sorts of things. So I'm just really pleased to have you here to be able to part your great wisdom on the rest of us. Listen, before we get started, Dre, can you just tell our audience a little bit about, who is Dre? Who is the man Dre?
Sure. Well, aside from what's in the resume, I mean, background was always in sports and start playing basketball around age 14, which was pretty late to
Yeah.
make it as an athlete to play college ball, let alone anything else. Only played 1 year of high school ball, basically sat the bench that year. So I had to walk on if I wanted to play college. Nobody was asking me to come play, but I was going to college. So I figured I'd just try to play my way onto the team. I was able to do that, but only playing at the Division III level, which is a third tier of college sports that doesn't generally produce professional athletes. Those
I
are the
see.
guys you see on TV, Division 1. And getting out of college, I played in college, but again, nobody was knocking on my door because of the level that I played at. So I had to hustle my way into an opportunity to make an opportunity to play pro ball, which I was able to do 1 year removed from college graduation. So I didn't go straight from college to playing professionally. I
Interesting.
worked for 1 year, a couple regular jobs, quote unquote, as a salesperson at Foot Locker, and then as a membership salesperson at a gym called Bally Total Fitness, which is out of business now. But Kevin, not because of me. I sold a lot of memberships for Bally, so they appreciated me. Then 2005, that's when I started playing pro. At the same time, started putting videos on that website, YouTube, that you mentioned. So I kind of had two things going at the same time, but YouTube wasn't a thing in 2005.
No, not really.
That didn't really become a thing until about 2009 when I had built up somewhat of an audience. I had some people watching me consistently, and that's when I figured, how can I make some money from this? Because at that up to that point, I was making no money from publishing content on the internet. So those of you old enough to remember, there was a time you're publishing online. There's no money to be made. You were a bum living in the basement who needed to get a real job if that's what you were doing. So I'm still playing basketball. I would sometimes have a contract, sometimes not have a contract. So I found myself between contracts in professional sports in 2009. And in that gap, that's when I started looking at this internet presence that I had, which now people call a personal brand, or you could even say a business, but it wasn't either one of those things then. And that's when I started thinking about how can I be more intentional with this, where I can combine basketball, which that's what most of my audience knew me for, basketball, combined with the fact that I am kind of an internet geek, like a closet internet geek, and then combine that with making money. How can I do all three at the same time?
Love it.
And at the time, there was no easy answer to that question. These days, it'd be a very simple answer. You can plug it into no Chat GPT and it'll tell you what to do. But back then, there was no Chat GPT. You had to figure it out. And
Hmm.
that's when I started creating my own products. My first products were $5 a piece just for basketball players to practice dribbling and shooting. And when I started selling those products, Kevin, that's when I said to myself, I can do this for the rest of my life, i.e., taking an idea out of my head, putting it on paper in some way, shape, or form, metaphorically or literally, and then putting a price tag on it and selling it. And that was what I now know to be called intellectual property. Didn't know that term back then.
Mm.
But when I did that, I said, okay, I have a lot of ideas. I have more than just two ideas, and I think I can sell them for more than $5 a piece. So what else can I do? And over time, I started creating, of course, more stuff for the basketball players, but also an important piece that should be added in here is the players were asking about mindset. They were asking me, Kevin, about how do you show up every day to practice, or how do you get the confidence to come play in the games, or why'd you keep trying when you got cut from the high school team all those years, or how'd you get the idea to think you could even become a pro ball player? And I'll start answering those questions, talking about things like discipline and confidence and mental toughness and taking initiative and taking accountability and ownership of your situation. And when I started talking about those things, Kevin, the players said, hey, this is really useful. This will help me apply the physical tools that you're showing on YouTube. It'll help me apply it in games, the mental piece. And also, people who didn't play sports started finding me. So this was the transition right here.
Interesting.
So this is when this is on YouTube still. I
So what
did
year? We're
these,
still around 2009, 10, something like this, or
this is between 2009 and 2011 is when this whole
okay.
transition happened. So I played ball from 2005 to 2015.
Okay.
But in the middle of it, this is when I started talking about mindset as well as I started selling things. So this was this 3 year span was huge for me.
Mm.
So around 2009, 2010, the players were asking about mindset. So I started making a video every Monday because at this point I'm putting out basketball videos on YouTube every day. Sometimes I was putting out videos 2 and 3 a day on YouTube, and they were not cannibalizing each other. There was just so much opportunity on YouTube at this time.
Yeah.
And on Mondays, I started putting out this mindset video. I called it the weekly motivation. And the first one I put out, I said to the players who were watching me, because my audience was 99% basketball, if you all want me to keep doing this, just tell me. But if this is not your cup of tea, we'll just stick to basketball. Stick to sports, as they said. So I put that first video out, and people said, Dre, this is great. Please do more. So I did that every Monday,
Mm.
weekly motivation. I did that every Monday for 400 Mondays in a row, Kevin. And that laid the foundation because what happened, number one, three things happened at the same time. Number one, the basketball player said, Dre, the way you break down mindset is just as good, if not better, than the way you break down basketball skills. Number two, people who didn't play basketball found me and said, Dre, this stuff applies to me, and I don't even play sports. And number three, I got the proverbial, started to build on that proverbial 10,000 hours of practice of being able to articulate and
Mm,
explain something that's intangible and making it understandable for the average person. So all three of those things were very important because this told me that when I get done playing basketball, I'm not stuck in the basketball space. Because Kevin, unlike a lot of players, and a lot of them are my friends who I still know to this day, I knew I didn't want to become a trainer or a coach after I got done playing. I said, I want to play, and that's it. I'm not doing anything else in basketball. I'm just playing. And if I'm not playing, I'm not in the game. I wanted to do something that wasn't basketball. And I knew I had other abilities and other ways I could serve people outside of athletes. And
mm,
this told me exactly what it was. I can help people who don't play sports with the mindset that works in sports and apply it outside of sports. Was exactly pretty much what I do today. So in 2015, when I stopped playing, I already had an audience of people, and you also got to remember basketball players eventually age out of basketball. So
yeah,
most of the basketball players who were following me in 2010 don't play basketball anymore, but a lot of them are still in my audience.
very
Many of them are
interesting.
entrepreneurs. Many of them have moved on to professional careers. They have families and kids now, and they were in high school, right? So they have grown with me. Not every basketball player makes it to the pro level. Some careers end in high school, some in college. So many of them would age out and go into other things, and I was there for that. And then I was picking up this audience of people who didn't even play sports, but they liked the approach of this guy. And it's
Hmm.
interesting because he used to play sports, but he's translating it, so it's an interesting approach. And at the same time, I started to learn more about business and entrepreneurship. As I learned more, I was able to then incorporate that into what I was teaching people because my superpower, Kevin, is not my ability to run and jump and dunk a basketball
Hmm.
or even explain mindset. It's my ability to absorb and understand a concept, break it down into bite-sized pieces, and then put it back together in a way that anyone can understand it. That's what I do best. So as
Right.
I learned more about business and entrepreneurship, I took that knowledge and now I was able to parse it and explain it to people who didn't know it in the way that I could explain it. So that's how I was able to really leverage my true skill, which is what we're doing here in this conversation. So that's what I've been doing over the last 10 years is
Wow.
really building up this company, and it's called Work on Your Game. So
Yeah,
that's
just that short setup that you just did planted about 1,000 questions in my head. So now I don't know where to go with it all. But let me ask this though. Let's get a little meta and back up a second. So
mm,
you you get into basketball and decide to go overseas to play. And then you start thinking about business and as you said, and the whole branding. You know, I don't know. Can you speak to this mindset of stepping outside of yourself, stepping outside of like just being immersed in basketball? And it's been my experience. I've lived overseas several times. Basketball players overseas are very popular, in their own right, wherever they're at. And so there can be a lot of distractions. But it sounds like you sort of had this, I don't know, this business mindset already, or this little extra something going on in your head
mm.
that allowed you to think maybe a little more strategically, a little bit more with critical thinking. I don't know what the question is, but how did all of
I
that sort of
understand.
develop?
Great question. I'm glad you asked this and you're paying attention. So, uh, we got to go back in the story. So, I graduated from college in 2004. Now, one spring, late spring in the semester, I'm walking past a bulletin board on campus. And bulletin board said, you want to make some extra money in the summertime. Now, this is before in college sports now they have this thing called name, image, and likeness. You familiar with it? Okay, so now the
Yeah.
players can make money off their name and advertising. Back then, you
Yes.
could not do that.
Right.
If you were an athlete in 2002 and you took money based on who you were violating the rules. You couldn't
Yeah.
play.
Hmm.
Right, so college athletes were pretty much broke. We had two jobs: playing the sport
Hmm.
and going to school. So I wanted that extra money. So I responded to the ad. Turns out this guy's doing what I didn't know then, but now we know. It's called network marketing.
Hmm.
Now, I did not build a career in network marketing, but I did go to some of the hotel meetings. A couple things happened in these meetings. Number one is that the speaker from the stage was breaking down money making ideas and concepts in ways that me, with a 4 year business degree, had never heard in a college lecture hall. I said,
Interesting.
why are they not teaching this at school? Like, this makes perfect sense. Why aren't they teaching it? And that's a different conversation, and they weren't teaching it. That's number one. Number two was this guy said, hey, if you're going to build a business, because you go to the meetings, half the people are already doing the business and half of them are
Mhm.
about to. He said, if you're going to build a business, you got to build yourself because your business will never grow more than you grow. And he said, you have to make sure you're investing in this personal development. I never heard that phrase, personal development. I'd always been into reading books. My mother's an educator, so I was big into reading from a young age. And I never knew there was a title for this concept of things that you can do to kind of work on your mind to make you a more valuable and more productive person. I was always into those kind of books, but I didn't know there was a term for it. So when he said personal development, I said, okay, that sounds like the kind of stuff I like. And he said, outside of the room, there's these ladies at a table. They're selling these books. If you're going to join the business, buy the books and read the books. That'll help you build your business. And he would name drop these authors: Napoleon Hill, Jim Rohn, Tracy. I never heard of these guys. I said, who are these people? And I couldn't even afford the books. Mind you, I'm a broke college student, but I remember the names. So when I got back to school, I went on my computer and I went on eBay. This is pre-Amazon. Amazon existed, but eBay was still the place. I bought a book. I bought two pirated copies of two books that I could remember. One of them was Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill.
Yeah, classic.
And yes, that book showed me that there's a way that you can intentionally alter your patterns of thought to alter your behavior. And the second one was called Rich Dad Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki.
Mm.
And that one laid the foundation for there's another way to make money besides getting a 9 to 5 job. And these are two things that I had never been told. And mind you, I'm like 21 years old. I've never been
Yeah,
told these things.
yeah.
So that planted the seed in my mind. Flash forward. I said, when I get done playing basketball, I knew after college I'm gonna play basketball, hopefully. It's like, man, Division 3, no guarantee I was gonna play.
Sure.
After I get done playing basketball, I'm going to go into entrepreneurship. I don't know how, when, or where, but I'm going to do
Yeah.
it. Maybe I'll go back to network marketing. We don't know. Maybe I'll be in real estate like Kiyosaki. I don't know. But that was the thought. So this is just a seed in my head. Graduated from college 2004. There's no guarantee I'm gonna make it as a pro ball player. So even the times when I'm signed to a contract, as I told you, I started creating products, Kevin, because there were times when I was not signed. So I didn't know when the next check was coming. So those of you who don't know, the sports world is not different than actors and actresses that sometimes you see them tending bar or working at Starbucks in between jobs. Like not everybody is Denzel Washington.
Right, right.
They we don't know when the next job's coming.
Yeah.
So right. So at that time, once I found myself in between jobs. One of the reasons why I started making products is I remembered Kiyosaki. And they said you want to back then I learned you want to create an asset, not just have yourself as the only asset. Because if you're
Hmm.
the only asset, as soon as you stop working, your money stops. Well, what was I
Hmm.
doing? I was an out of work athlete. I wasn't working, there was no money. So it came full circle. And I said, okay, how can I create an asset? How can I create something that I do the work one time, I get paid over and over again? Okay, let me create this product for $5. Now it's only $5, but I can sell this $5 product to 100 different people. That's $500, but I only did the work one time. So I have that in my head. At the same time, this is about 2009 again, about a year and a half earlier, I read another book. It was called The 4 Hour Work Week by Tim Ferriss.
Hmm.
And Tim Ferriss took a lot of the principles of Kiyosaki. I always noticed the parallels between the two of them. Took a lot of Kiyosaki's principles and translated them to the digital world because his book was all about how to do it on the internet.
Hmm.
Kiyosaki was just about how to do it, period. So Kiyosaki was the mindset. Tim Ferriss is more tactical. Here's exactly what to do. Here's how you can hire somebody in India who you never met to be your personal assistant. I never thought of the concept. And that's where he actually laid out here's how to sell a product on the internet. Here's how to test it. Here's how to run a couple ads for $5. Nowadays it'd be $50, but back then it was $5. And that's how I got the idea for the product. So that's where that started. And as far as answering your question or your statement, that there's a question in there, which is how did you get this idea? Is number one, as an athlete, there's no guarantee that you're going to be on a team next year. Athletic careers are very short. And
Mm.
a great athlete plays, Kobe Bryant plays 20 years. Tom Brady plays till he's 45. Those are exceptions. That's not the
Exceptions,
normal
yeah.
story,
No, that's right.
right? Normal NBA career is like 5 years. Normal
Yeah.
football career is 3. So you have to understand most pro athletes, even the guys who play and sign a
Yeah.
contract, by the
Mm.
time they're 30, they're done.
They're done. Yeah.
So there was no guarantee that I was going to keep playing. So I always had my eye on what is after this
Yeah.
because I'm probably not going to be Kobe because I didn't go from high school to the NBA. So what am I going to do when I'm done playing? How do I make myself a useful person to the world? Because even if I had made $100 million playing basketball, which I didn't, but if I had, I still wouldn't want to just sit around from age
Yeah.
35 on and just count my
Yeah.
money every day. Like who are you?
Yeah.
So I need to be able to contribute still after that.
You know,
So I'll go
yeah.
ahead.
Well, so and so I'm gonna try to capture this right now for our audience because what you're saying I think is so important, and I also want to relate it to one of the books that you've written about asking good questions, asking better questions, I think it is, or something like this.
Yes.
And even in listening to you now, Dre, I can hear that you asked yourself, and this is what I advocate a lot of and coach a lot about, and that is about asking good questions. But
That's right.
what I like about what I hear you saying is that you not only ask good questions, but they're simple, straightforward questions. How can I take this and make more money with it?
Mhm.
Where it's so I'm just listening to your whole trajectory, and whether it was intentional or not, especially at a young age, you had this capacity to step back and just go, okay, what is this right here? What's going on? And I really appreciate that. And I'd love for you to share this with the audience about, especially maybe our younger audience who's trying to get into a career, who's trying to figure out what they want to do,
Mhm.
how this ability that you've obviously developed for one, stepping back, stopping, if you will, stepping back and asking really good questions. Can you just share what your thinking is behind this? Is not, you didn't know I was going to ask you this question, so
That's a
I'm
good
putting you
question.
on the spot here, but go ahead.
No, you can put me on the spot as much as you want. I like these kind of questions.
Love it.
So the thing is, Kevin, that's all good coaching is.
Yeah.
And you as a coach, you understand that. Good coaching is not about having all the answers. All right? It's
Right.
about asking the right questions because
Hmm.
the right questions from a coach opens up the mind of the prospect or the client
Mm.
to answer with information that they already have, but because they never been posed the proper question, they couldn't pull that information out of
Hmm.
themselves.
Mm.
And that's what a good coach does. You help your clients achieve breakthroughs, not because you give them all this information. They can get information on the internet. It's they get information out of themselves when it's put into the proper context. Now they're like, oh, now I get it. And now
Mm.
they have it. Now they have this new frame that you help them develop, but now they're stronger even if you're not in the room. That's what a good coach does. So back to the question that you were asking. Tell me the question again.
Well, again, even at a young age, you seem to be able to coach yourself almost by just stepping
Uh,
back and asking these very simple but profound questions. Even you
right.
just said it a moment ago, who am I? Well, that's a
Mm,
great question. Or like you said, even a more practical question. You're looking at something you sound, how can I take this and
mm,
turn it into this? That's a
right.
simple question, but it's so thoughtful. So I'm trying to get maybe some of the people that are listening, especially
Mm.
younger people, to understand how to do that.
Great question. And I think one thing is, I wish I could point to one simple thing that gave me
Sure.
that, but there's not. Is that I've always been a sponge. And I mentioned earlier that I come from a two-parent household. My father did manual work and then he did music at night. That was his
Mm,
passion. My mom was an educator. She basically was in charge of the discipline for the kids. And she got me into reading books. And I'm bringing that
wow.
up to say this. She got me into the reading of the books. So my mom would go to the bookstore. Again, this is before Amazon. You want a book, you had to go to the store. She would go to the bookstore and get books for like early education. That's what her area of her niche area. I would go to the human psychology section and the sports section, and I
Man,
would always find
wow.
books, and I would just anything I found interesting, I would read it.
Holy crap.
And my parents still have a bookshelf on the wall at home from since I was a kid. We had encyclopedias, all that stuff. And just from reading different books, I just pick up things. So I would just pick up random things from random places just by reading. And I'll just finish reading a book called Volume Control. It's literally about how people lose their hearing. Now, why am I reading that book? I just happened to have it in my library. I said, oh, let me listen to this one.
Mhm.
And I read that book, and there was something I found a little interesting nugget in there that I'll tell you, I'll share it with you because I just finished reading it this morning. That interesting nugget is that the death industry is highly regulated. That you know that when someone dies, that you cannot bury them without a casket. Like you literally must have a casket to bury a dead body.
No, I
Did you know
didn't know
that?
that.
I didn't
No,
know that either. So this is the reason why people go into the casket business because everybody who dies must buy a casket. That's crazy, right?
that is crazy.
Yeah, so that's I'm a
Just throw
sponge. So
me
I
in a
just pick up these
box,
random
man.
things. Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly. So you can't just bury a body in the backyard. You have to put it in a casket,
that's
legally
crazy.
speaking. So anyway, I'll just pick up little nuggets of things like that, and then I retain it, and that's where I got it from. So I remember reading a book called Pop by this author by the name of Sam Horn,
I know Sam
and
Horn. Yeah.
you know Sam Horn. Okay,
Hmm.
so in that book, she talked about that's how I came up with not work on your game, but Dre all day. That was the first name I came up with, was
I
Dre all
love
day.
that too.
And
Yeah.
it's like being alliterative, something
Yeah.
that
Yeah. Yeah.
rhymes and something that's
Hmm.
short enough. I said, how can I didn't like,
Hmm.
yeah, I was like, Baldwin doesn't quite pop with anything.
Yeah.
Dre
Yeah.
does. So how can I
Bold,
do that?
bold on Baldwin. No, Dre all
Yeah,
day works.
exactly. And it's easy. People can hear it and remember it, right?
Yes,
So
that's
people
right.
see me in the streets and they still know me, Dre all day from basketball days. So
Love
it's
it.
just picking up these little pieces and just listening to things. And even the TED Talks, for example, I mentioned Tim Ferriss. So Tim Ferriss has this podcast. Most people know he does 2 and 3 hour interviews. He was
Hmm.
interviewing this guy named Derek Sivers. You know, Derek, heard of him?
Boy, I'm not sure. I'm not
He's written a
sure.
few books. He's done some TEDx talks, and he was saying at the end of the interview, Tim said, well, "How can people reach you? How can people find out about you?" He said, "You can email me." And Tim said, "You sure about that? I got 10 million listeners. I'm not sure you want emails." He said, "No, you can email me. It'll maybe take me a while, but I'll get through every email." So I
Interesting.
emailed him. I emailed Derek Sivers, and I said,
I
"Hey, I'm a
love it.
fan. I've been reading your stuff." And this is like 2014. So I'm looking at the end of the road for basketball and I'm thinking, what do I do next? How exactly do I want to do it? Yes, I
Hmm.
can sell my $5 programs, but I want something else.
Yeah.
And I was figuring I would go into professional speaking maybe, but I didn't know how to break into the industry. And I knew he was a speaker because he mentioned that he does speaking gigs and et
Yeah.
cetera. So I asked him, how do I get in the speaking business? And I wrote him a pretty nice introductory letter because I actually was a fan of his work. And he said, well, I appreciate you writing this letter. Here's what you can do. Maybe you can try to do a TED Talk first. Go to the TEDx website and put in where you live, and you'll see the events in your neighborhood, and then you can apply, and maybe you can get a couple of those.
Mm.
The reason I started doing TED Talks because of that advice from Derek Sivers. That's where I got it from. And again, it was just listening, paying attention, and how many people heard him say, email me. But they figured after Tim said, you're going
Yeah.
to get so many emails, they figured, all right, he's going to get so many, he's not going to read mine. I wrote him an email and he wrote back.
That's
And
incredible.
I followed what he said. And that was more than 10 years ago that he
Yeah.
gave me that information. So it's just picking up little things
Yeah.
and it's being an opportunist. My favorite author, Robert Greene, he talks about opportunism, is
Hmm.
always keeping your eyes open for it, an opportunity. You never know where it's at, but you got to be paying attention.
Yeah. Well, you just laid out so many nuggets, and I'm hoping that my listeners are really particularly those who are either just starting their career, or maybe shifting their career, because you talked about one that you were a sponge, and I would suggest that that happens by way of curiosity. It's very obvious that you're a curious person. The
Mm,
reading piece, I mean, there's just, you know, the depth that I hear coming from you. uh, I could have almost guessed that you were a serious reader because you can hear the depth. And that comes from reading, really. It
mm,
doesn't come from talking. It comes from reading and learning and absorbing things. And then the other thing, as you just said, that you're an opportunist. And so an
mm.
opportunist keeps their eyes open, right? You're
Right.
just it's not like you're doing this with, these laser focused eyes, but you keep your peripheral vision happening. You're paying attention to what's going on around you. And just like you said, to pick up on this notion that this guy is going to probably get 10 million emails and you're going to be one of them and he'll promise to read it. You jumped out there and did that. Very powerful stuff, Dre, for people to latch on to. I appreciate it. Well, listen, let me ask you this, get more into a little bit more into your niche about your ideas and your really excellent concepts. I want to start by asking you, what is discipline in your way of thinking? How do you
Mm.
define discipline?
Great question. And we can go longer if you want. I don't know if you're looking at the clock. But
No.
discipline is the way I define it when I'm talking to my audience is your willingness and ability to show up every single day and do the work. It's just doing your
Mm,
job. And I mentioned my parents earlier. My discipline comes from them. My mom was the disciplinarian with the kids. Go to school, do your homework. Can't go outside on school days. Can't play video games to the weekends. All that. And my dad didn't talk about it or preach it, but I mean, he slept about 4 or 5 hours a night for about 30 years because he had his side hustle was the music. And he had a 9 to 5 job. And that's where I got it from. And whenever people ask me and they ask me, where'd you get this idea of discipline? I have to go back to that because there was
of
nobody who sat
course.
me down and said, Dre, do this, this, this. I just picked it up.
Yeah.
And neither of my parents are athletes. I'm 6 feet 4 inches tall. My mom is like 5'7". My dad's like 5'8". They're not basketball players, so they couldn't have taught me.
Interesting.
And when I started playing basketball, my dad's into sports, but he wasn't basketball.
Sure.
So when I started playing basketball, it's not like I could go to one of them and hey, help me out. It was I just took what I saw at home which is show up every day and work. And I said, okay, good thing about basketball is you can practice by yourself. So if you got a ball and you know where the court is, I was 3 blocks away from the playground. I could just go there and practice on my own. And that's how I got good, is just showing up and practicing. And being that it worked in basketball, excuse me, once I started talking to the basketball players on YouTube, one of the things that they noticed, because remember what I've already told you, Kevin, that there were times when I built up my YouTube channel, there was a gym not far from me in Miami. That's a public gym. Everybody knows where it is. If you watch my videos and you play ball, you live in Miami, you know that gym. Everybody knew exactly where I was at. I was easy to assassinate, as they say. And I would be in that gym every day practicing, and there'd be nobody else in the gym. So a lot of the other players, a lot of the players who were watching me on YouTube would say, Dre, how do you always have a gym to yourself? And eventually I would talk about that concept I call it the third day. I'll tell you about that in a second.
I love that
And
too.
yes, it was just coming in there and working out every day and practicing every day. And the players saw that I'm in this gym in Miami, yet I'm telling them I'm a professional basketball player. Well, Joe, you're a pro. Why are you in this empty gym in Miami?
Yeah.
Because sometimes I'll be in between jobs. And I
Yeah.
don't know when the next job is coming. So they would
Yeah.
ask, well, where are you going to play next? I don't know.
Yeah.
But you keep practicing. Yes. All right. Being that you don't know when the next opportunity is coming, why do you keep showing up? And it wasn't even something I ever even thought about. To me, it was just
Interesting.
my normal way of thinking. Like, of course, you got to stay ready because if the call comes, you got to be ready to hop on a plane. The way it works in
Yeah, you can't do an
sports,
interview and say I'll be ready in a month, you know. I mean, you
right?
got to be ready.
Right, in pro sports, when that call comes, you're on a plane like the next day,
Wow.
and they expect you to be ready to play within 48 hours. And if you're
Wow.
not ready, they send you back and call the next guy. That's the way it works. So you have to stay ready, and the hard part is staying ready, not knowing what you're staying ready for, or
Mm.
if you're staying ready for anything. Maybe the phone
Mm.
never rings. So
Mm.
when I they saw that in the videos, they said there's something interesting about this guy, and then they found out about the background. He only played 1 year in high school. He walked on in college, and here he is still trying to make it happen in pro sports, and he still keeps showing up. And he seems to like be enthusiastic about this, and he can explain it. There was something. I'm just assuming this is the way they're thinking. There's something interesting about this guy's approach. So let's find out what's going on. And I am. I can say this because I'm an athlete. I am the rare athlete who not only could do it, but I could explain it. I had
Wow.
the ability to explain it. It wasn't just that I could do it. A lot of athletes can play, but they can't tell you how they
I
do it.
get that. Yeah. No,
Right.
100%.
And my ability to break it down is really what made me different. It's not that I was the best player, but I could explain the game better than a lot of players who maybe played better than me, had a better career than me. So as I started breaking down and explaining it, turns out, again, I told you at the beginning, that was my superpower. It wasn't basketball.
Yeah.
Basketball was just a subject. Then when I moved it from basketball to talking about mindset, it was the same thing, my ability to explain it. And then the same thing when it comes to business. So the third day was just about how do you show up and keep doing the thing even when it's not exciting to show up and do the thing? Because most people can show up when it's exciting, but they can't show up when it's not exciting. Or when it's working, they'll show up, but they can't when it's not working. And my ability to do that, just that, I guess some people call it tenaciousness or persistence or grit or stick to itiveness, whatever you want to call it. They're all under the umbrella of discipline. I noticed that that's really the superpower of most high level professionals is not just the ability to do the thing, it's the ability to do the thing when you don't feel like doing the thing. And all signs point
Yeah.
to take the day off from doing this thing, but you
Yeah.
show up anyway.
Well,
That's really what separates.
whoo, Lord, I love that, man. I mean, and the whole third day concept, I think, is fabulous. You know, whether it takes 3 days or whatever the case might be. But so let me just ask you this though before we get onto that, because I do
Mhm.
love your idea, your book of the third day. But you know, doesn't it take self-discipline to be self-disciplined?
It's a good question. I never
Because
thought.
you talk about discipline shouldn't be that hard. I mean, or that,
Yeah.
right? You say it's not supposed to be that, doesn't necessarily need to be that hard to be disciplined. But I've
Mm.
always thought to myself, I mean, if you're not self-disciplined, you're not going to be self-disciplined.
It's a good question. I never thought of it that way. I would say self-discipline to be self-disciplined.
Because it would of course submit that it's inherent that you have to be born with discipline or that you have to just intrinsically have discipline in order to be disciplined. So
Yeah,
if
yeah, yeah.
somebody's not naturally self-disciplined, how do they get
Right.
there?
That's great. That question I can tell you.
That's
I got to
the
think about this
please.
self-discipline to be self. I got to marinate on that one for a
Okay.
So when it comes to the discipline itself, the reason a lot of people fail with it because everybody wants it. You stop 100 people on the street, say, "Do you want more discipline in any aspect of life?" Everybody says yes,
100%.
but a lot of people don't have it. So what's the problem? It's not that everybody in life is failing. It's that most people just go about it incorrectly. Many people think discipline is a byproduct of either willpower or motivation, and they're wrong on both fronts. Motivation can get you started to do something that would lead to discipline. The problem with motivation is that, as they say, motivation is a renter and discipline is a buyer. All right. Discipline buys the house, motivation rents the house. All right.
Wow.
So motivation is temporary. It shows up as a visitor, right? And
Very
discipline moves
interesting.
in the house, right? And many people can get motivated. Again, what I tell you, the videos I made, weekly motivation. All right. But the thing is, I had to do another one next Monday, all right, to get you motivated again. So what if I don't make a video on Monday? What are you going to do? Not work out? And that's sometimes I would even ask the players that. Like,
Very
what if I'm not around
interesting.
to motivate you? What are you going to do? And none of them had an answer to the question. So the discipline is the key. So discipline is a byproduct of structure, not willpower. Willpower can get you started. Willpower is basically what you use when you're not motivated. Motivation is what you use when you don't need willpower because you're excited. What if you don't have either one? Then the discipline is comes from the structure, and the structure is simply a system or a process that says do A, B, C, D, E, and as long as you follow the structure, you're going to get a certain. You're going to do certain things, and it's going to produce a certain outcome. As long as you trust the structure that you're following. So a good example of this is McDonald's. Now, I think all of us can agree that McDonald's does not make the best food. We don't even know if it's food, right?
Yeah.
Are those fries
That's
potatoes or
correct.
those
Yeah.
burgers beef?
Yeah.
Probably
Yeah.
not.
Yeah.
Right, right. But they sell a ton of both, right?
Yes, they
Maybe more
do.
than everybody. Now, why is this? It's because they have the cleanest, tightest structure in the restaurant industry of any company in the world. They have the best structure. That when I worked at McDonald's when I was in high school. So somebody orders a cheeseburger. Everybody knows what it is. Four guys on the line. One guy puts the bread into this little warmer for 10 seconds. He puts it on the paper. He puts one squirt of ketchup, one squirt of mustard, slides it over to the next guy. They put onions and a pickle and a piece of cheese, quote unquote. Slide it over to the next guy. They put the meat, whatever that is, on there. Then
Yeah.
they wrap it up, put the little sticker on there, put it into the warmer. Somebody at the front line grabs it, puts it in the bag, grabs the fries, puts it in the bag, and they take the money. That system has worked billions of times,
Yeah.
and they do it fast. That's the reason why they sell so many burgers.
Yeah.
The point being that if you and I went and worked at McDonald's today, Kevin, we would look like very disciplined workers, but it's not us. All we're doing is what the system tells us to do.
Very interesting.
The system is disciplined. We are just operating the system. And people who run businesses is ultimately what we want to get to, right? We want the system doing all the work so that we can just benefit from what the system does rather than us have to do all the work ourselves. And the challenge for me, even going back to the network marketing and then into sports, is that I realized from a young age, and even the speakers at network marketing events would say this, they didn't know me, but they would say, well, you think of someone like a professional athlete or a singer or a rapper or an entertainer or
Hmm.
an actor. It's
Hmm.
great because you're famous and you're making all this money for doing all the work. The problem is you can't stop working
Hmm.
because you can't make any money if you're doing all the work. You can't
Yeah.
make a system out of being Michael Jordan, right? As soon as
That's
you stop
true.
being Michael Jordan, that's it. The
That's
checks
it.
stop coming. So
Yep.
you need the
Next.
system. And I had that in my head from the very beginning. And again, Robert Kiyosaki, he said, don't work for money because if you work for money, as soon as you stop working, you stop making money, no matter how much you
Hmm.
make. And that was the whole concept of rich dad, poor
Hmm.
dad. His poor dad
Hmm.
worked for money. And when he lost his job, he lost his money. But his rich dad was not educated, but he owned the system. So even if he wasn't working, he was making money. And I said, okay, that's what I need to be doing. And the easiest entry point to that, from what I understood then, was network marketing. Even $500, now you own the system, right? As long as you can operate it. And I said, okay,
Hmm.
there are other ways to do this as well. And then I learned more and more over time. So the discipline is about having a system in place that you operate without really having to think about it. So when someone has a morning routine, that's a discipline. That's a system. When you have a process
Wow.
for how you do your podcast, that's a system. When you have people who work for you and you train them on what to do and they just do it every time over and over again, that is a system. So when you have a good system, the discipline happens automatically. You don't have to think about it.
Man, that's fantastic. A friend of mine, uh, he's a legend actually in the speaking industry, Jim Cathcart. I don't know if you know his name,
No, I don't know.
but as a matter of fact, for those who may not recognize him, he created the system, actually what if you want to call it system, but the concept of relationship management selling.
Okay.
This
That I
whole
heard of.
concept.
Yes.
Anyways, he one of his systems. He gets up every morning and used to when he was out in California, he's in Texas now. He would go out every morning and do these incredible hikes up into the mountains with a group of friends.
Mm.
Well, his system, if you want to say at least the first step in his system for staying motivated is that when he would wake up in the morning, the first thing he would do is drop his leg off the bed, one leg, his right leg off the bed.
Mhm.
And that was the trigger that, I mean, it's pretty hard to sleep when you've dropped your leg off the bed, but that was the trigger to then, to the next step of just getting up,
That's
you
right.
see.
Yes.
And he's followed that very simple process, which leads me to the next, I guess, point,
Mhm.
and that is that the system doesn't have to be complex, does it? It
Not
can
at
be
all.
simple.
No. A system can be one step. What you
Correct.
just said. The
Yeah.
system is one step, and it's put your sneakers next to the door so that we're going to go outside and run tomorrow morning. All right,
Yeah.
that is a system.
That is a
Uh,
system.
if you grab your shoes, if you have a dog, the dog knows that you're about to go outside, and that means he's going as well. All right,
Yeah.
that's a system. So a system does not have to be complex. It can be complex. That's kind of how you make it proprietary. So the system for making Coca-Cola is proprietary, so you can't copy it. But another system can be an extremely simple thing. So absolutely, a system just means a set of movements or rules or instructions that, when followed, is expected to produce a certain outcome. So it can be one step, it can be 1,000.
Yeah. So, and I do want to talk about this third day thing, but before we get that, I'll just ask this question that's sort of burning on my head, in my head. I know you've talked about it a lot, about the idea of working hard, that it's got to be part of the component for becoming successful. There's just
That's right.
really no way around it. But, and I'm tying this a little bit in with discipline. But Dre, there are people that they want to be successful. They
Mhm.
want to put in the work, but they're not these crazy driven 4 hours of sleep a night, just constantly hustling and crushing it. And I think rightfully so that there are people who want to be successful, but they don't want to be that person that misses their entire life because they're so driven and, i.e., disciplined to
Mhm.
be successful. Do you have thoughts around that idea?
Well, I got to ask a question to answer your question is what do you mean by missing your entire life?
Well, I mean, listen, I used to coach a guy. He was extremely successful, owned a,
Mhm.
a big national company,
Mhm.
extremely wealthy. I mean, he just had everything. And when I had a conversation with him, it's probably been 5 years now, I was just saying, man, you've just crushed it in every aspect of your life. And he goes, yeah. He goes, yeah. He said, yeah, except my family life has been shit. You know,
Yes, I heard
he's,
that story.
yeah, you
Yeah.
know. And so that's what I'm talking about is, that there's, I suppose there are those, and maybe they're a little bit more of the one-offs, the
Mhm.
Michael Jordans, if you will, that they their work is their fun. They don't feel like they're really missing out on life because they love it. Now, again,
Right.
when we talk about your family life, that could be completely different. Or how
Yes.
about, people like, for instance, I'm a Christian, I don't want to ignore that part of my life. I don't want to
Mhm.
ignore my daughters, my wife, or anything because I'm so driven to be successful. So I'm just trying to ask the question around this idea that do
Mhm.
you have to be this crazy nut of a hustler to be successful?
Great question. And I appreciate the context. And that's a very important question, especially for men, because we tend to be very driven. Especially the most driven men, are often heads of households. We have
Yeah.
kids and wives who are looking at us and expecting
Hmm.
things of us. And we could literally spend 24 hours a day working. Right?
Yeah.
And it looks like you're in your office. I'm in mine.
Hmm.
I could
Hmm.
stay in here all day if I
Yep.
didn't have to
Same
go to
here.
the
Hmm.
bathroom. Right. And
Hmm.
how do you balance that with kids needing you, wives needing you, community needing you, anything else needing you? So while at the same time making sure that you're not cheating the business and cheating the success, because every minute you're not doing it, your opponent is doing it. The proverbially in the sports world, they say that all the time.
That's right.
And the answer to this is you kind of have to squeeze from both sides. And the way I explain it is thusly is that let's just say you could spend 16 hours a day working, but you don't have 16 hours a day because your kid has a soccer game at 5 o'clock and you got to spend some time with the wife and you need to go and your uh, Christian commitments, you have to do that as well. The question that you have to ask, and this is all about asking the proper questions. We talked about this earlier, being good
Hmm.
coaches. We both know that the quality of the question determines the quality of the answer.
Hmm.
Ask, and what you would do is put this in full context. Okay, I have this commitment over here to my religion, to my faith. And I have this commitment to my spouse. I have this commitment to my kids, and I have this commitment to my business. And I need the business to do what it's doing because this allows me to take care of my family. And allows
Hmm.
me to also give to my faith the way that I want to give to
Hmm.
it. At the same time, I can't give 16 hours a day to my business the way that I used to when I was single and without kids because I have these commitments. So how do I make all of this work and still make sure I'm producing the way I need to produce and being the person I need to be for my kids and my family and my faith?
I love
Now,
that.
most people would not even ask the question because they think it's impossible, right? And they wouldn't even try. So therefore, they never get the answer. So then they say, okay, well, I guess I got to give up one. So they get all this business success and they lose their family.
But let me just stop you right there, but before you keep going, because what you
Right.
just did was so important. I mean, to me, this is the at least part of the lesson, and then I'm gonna let you finish the lesson.
Hmm.
That you just broke it down. You said, okay, here are the four pieces, you know, and you put the context in the proper place, and then you just ask the question, how do I make all of these things work simultaneously,
Right.
essentially? So, I mean, I just love that. And this is, you're right. Some people don't just set it out there and look at it and say, okay, what do I got here? You know,
That's right.
please.
So it's asking the question, and then when the question is in proper context, now we can tackle the question. But the problem a lot of people have is that they never ask the right question, so they can never get to the right answer. So, being that we broke this down to four things, it's a metaphor. I didn't make this one up, but I would love to take credit for it. It's the
Thank you.
rocks, the gravel, the sand, and the water. Right. So
Mhm.
it's like you have a jar, you have a mason jar, and you have some rocks on the table, you have some gravel, you have some sand, and you have some water, and you got to fit all of them into the jar. The mistake that a lot of people make is they don't prioritize things. So
Mhm.
this is another thing that, again, as coaches, we understand this.
Mhm.
Someone comes to us and says, "Well, I got these seven things that I want to do." Okay, we got to put these seven things in order because anybody's been in the car before. How many steering wheels does a car have? All right, one. All right.
Mhm.
If you anyone's read the autobiography of Malcolm X, one thing he said in that book is that every organization must have a boss. Even if it's just you by yourself, you must be the boss of yourself. And the metaphor for that is every car has one steering wheel and one driver's seat. There could be 20
Mhm.
passengers, but there's one driver. So what is the
Mhm.
number one priority? If
Mhm.
all of these push came to shove and they all asked for your time at the same time, which one are you doing? Your
Yep.
faith, your spouse, your kids, or your business?
Mhm.
And I'm going to make somebody answer the question. You got to answer the question. Okay, now that one. Okay, now we got these three left. What's number two? We got these three left. What's number three? Okay, so this one is number four. Okay, you see that, right? Okay, now we're working from this frame. Now, if that changes, you tell me and we'll change what we're doing.
Wow.
So, number one is the rocks. You got to put the rocks in first. What most people do is they do it backwards. They put the water in first, then they put in the sand, then they put in the gravel, and then they try to fit the rocks. But the
Mhm.
rock is the most important thing.
Mhm.
So then they never put the rocks can't fit into the jar, and the rocks
Mhm.
often, in my experience, Kevin, you can tell me, dealing with men, the rock is your spouse.
Oh, that's
All
right.
right, that's the one that you try to fit
That's
into
right.
the jar last,
That's
right?
right. That's
And
right.
now they're having a
Yeah.
conversation with you like,
Yeah.
hey,
Yeah. Or your
you're doing
faith.
all this,
Yeah.
yeah, you're
Yeah.
doing all
Yeah.
this business
100%.
stuff, you're doing all this.
Hmm.
Hey,
Yeah.
don't forget about this, right?
Hmm.
And so the first thing, the rock has to go in first, and I've been guilty of this myself. Okay, so I'm not saying this from some high
Fair enough.
above place. Okay, the rock goes in first. You put the rocks in. Now you can fit in the gravel. The gravel fits around the rocks. Then you fit the sand, and if you have space, you put the water on top.
And
And
the
the
water
water
will
can fit
fit
into any
itself
little
in there.
crevice. Exactly,
Hmm.
exactly. But people get it wrong because the water is the easiest one to tackle. So people usually go to the easiest thing that they can get to besides before getting to the bigger things. Because the rock is the biggest thing. It's the hardest one to deal with. It's the most what's the word? You can be the clumsiest with the rocks as
Hmm.
opposed to the gravel, sand, and the water, but it's the one that's most important. It's the same thing when we're
That's
looking
right.
at our to-do list of the day. We have those one or two things that will make all the difference if we got them done, but we know they're going to be a lot of work to get done. So let me just do these little things that I can check off the box and I
That's
can
right.
feel productive. I get the dopamine hit, but then now it's 4 o'clock. I got to be done work at 5 and I didn't even start on the two big things.
I love it, man. That
Everybody makes that mistake, right?
yes, we do.
And we got to catch ourselves. That's the
That's
reason why the system and getting it into our minds to get to the big things first.
yeah, man, that was so beautifully said. So, Dre, tell us about the third day. I know it's a book.
Mhm.
I know it has to do with this idea that, at least the first day you can show up and crush it.
Mhm.
Maybe the second day, the third day is the tells the big tale, I guess. Something
Right.
along that lines. Please share. It's such a great idea.
Sure. I would use an analogy. We'll just use basketball since that's what
Okay,
we've been talking about. So let's
please.
say basketball players find out about some brand new gym in town that they can go practice at and they really want to practice. First day, every kid in town is at the gym, right? Because the gym's open, everybody now has a place to practice, and they can practice all the stuff they saw Dre doing on YouTube. So they're all
Hmm.
in the gym practicing.
Hmm.
Second day, people are still there. They were there as soon as it opened the first day, grand opening. As soon as they cut the ribbon, everybody rushes into the gym, like Black Friday back in the day. And then the second day, people are still showing up. They show up maybe 10 minutes after it opens, maybe an hour later. Not as enthusiastic, but everybody's still a lot of people still show up. By the third day and every day after that, now you're going to get only the serious people. All right, the
Hmm.
stragglers stop showing up. By the third day, you find out who seriously wants to get better because they keep showing up even when nobody else is showing up, even when it's not exciting anymore. The TV cameras are gone. There's no Instagramming. It's just you and this gym. And basketball players notice. So you walk into an empty gym and you got a ball, you're really excited. You're running all around the court, shooting shots, and you're all excited. About 20 minutes in, you're like, okay, there's not really anything to do here but work. So what exactly am I going to do?
Yeah.
And that's when you
Yeah.
find out how serious you
Yeah.
really are. Like, hey,
Yeah.
let me do the actual work here. And what the third day is about is when you realize that this thing that you signed up for, this marriage, this business, starting this podcast, writing this book. Okay, this is not one big party. It's not all fun and games. It is not as exciting as it looked on social media. There's some real work that has to be done here,
Oh
and this is
man.
the why it's called a job. Every
Hmm.
everything you can do in life, there is a job. And this is something I talk to my audience about all the time. Any industry you want to get into, you're not into it yet. I would suggest to everybody listening to this, go have a conversation with someone who's been in it for 10 years and make sure you ask them the question, what's the job here? And they'll know exactly what you mean. What's the
Hmm.
job? All right, the job is, let's say you want to be a professional speaker. The job is, okay, you got to go find leads and put them in the CRM. All right, that's the
Hmm.
job. The job is not getting on stage, getting a round of applause.
That's
That's the
true.
easy part.
That's right.
Right. You gotta do the job. What's the your podcaster, you have guests. What's the job? Okay. Finding guests, scheduling the guests, putting them in my calendar, sending them the
Yeah.
Zoom link, dealing with their staff and
Yeah.
people missing dates. That's the job. It's,
Yeah.
people don't talk about that part.
Editing.
Editing, right? If you do editing, right? So this is the job. So
Mhm.
everyone in any profession you're going to get in, you need to find out what the job is. As an athlete, the job is everything other than the games. See, people only see the games on TV. The job is working out 3 times a day in the off season when you don't even have a contract for next season. But if you don't work out 3 times a day, if a contract call comes and you're not ready to play, you just missed your opportunity. All right, that's the job. The job is getting those ice baths
That's
after the game,
fabulous.
right? And that's what the third day is all about: is understanding the part of the job that's not glamorous and your willingness to show up for that. Because if you don't do that at the professional level, everybody is good enough to beat you on talent. So if you don't have the discipline, you're going to lose. Most people are not so good that they can get by on talent alone. Even the best players that we hear about, the Michael Jordans, the LeBrons, what do you hear about them? Oh, these guys has the work ethic. They have a discipline. They do all this training in the offseason. The people who stick around, they have a combination of both talent and the discipline. I call it the can do and the want to. When you combine both of those together, you get magic. And everyone who's listening to this, anywhere where you want to be successful professionally, you need to have a combination of can do, that's actual skill, ability, talent, whatever, and want to, drive, determination, discipline, willingness to be coached. And when you combine those two, that's when you have potential for magic.
That's incredible. Let me ask you, Dre. I'm turn making a sharp right here.
Sure.
What is your daily discipline? What is your day like?
Great question. So I have a morning routine. It takes me from when I wake up, it's about 3:45 a.m. to 8 o'clock. And I wake up about 3:45, and first thing I'm doing is working out. So I drink a liter or two of water, usually two, before I go work out. So it's either running outside, and it's not basketball anymore. I go to the boxing gym. So 3 days a week is boxing gym. The other 3 days it's running outside, and then one day is more recovery stuff. And that's so the water, yoga, meditation. That's all in the morning. I'm out to the gym by about 5 o'clock, or to my workout by 5 o'clock. Finish the workout by sometime around 6. It's recovery, shower, shave. I'm listening to usually an audio book while I'm showering and shaving. And then that's probably gets me to about 7 o'clock. And the 7 o'clock hour, I'm just getting ready for the day. So I have these small daily tasks that I need to do every day. I'm pretty much knocking those out. If I have any emails that I need to immediately get to, anything from my staff I need to get to, I get to that in that 7 o'clock hour. Then by 8 o'clock, I'm usually starting my normal process. Monday through Friday these days, as of this recording, I usually do a live stream talking
Mhm.
about something or other. But then between 8 o'clock and 5 o'clock, it's whatever's on the schedule. So, for example, today, talking to Kevin's on the schedule. Other days, it may be a coaching call. Other days, it may be a sales conversation. It may be doing a speaking gig. So, in between 8 and 5, there's no set schedule. It's just
Got it.
whatever I need to do that day.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Lots of little things to do.
Right.
What would you tell? Because again, I think that I think that you're kind of a bit of an exception to the rule, though, from the standpoint that you've got these systems, you're very successful in in pretty much everything that you do because of what you have just explained to us. Your
Mhm.
ability to step back and look at situations, that, you grew up in a family that, that not only taught you discipline, but showed you discipline.
Mhm.
So this doesn't mean, you obviously work hard. That's not even a question. But, you know, what about the person who hasn't developed this sort of mindset of
Mhm.
what it takes to be successful? They have the desire, you know, they're smart enough to do it. What's one thing that a person who's listening, who maybe is younger and saying, you know what, I want to get out there just like Dre does and, and make it happen. What
Mhm.
would you recommend to this person do? Just one thing. What's the big thing in your mind? The big idea.
The one thing for a person who they have the desire, but what are they missing right now?
Just don't quite know how to to get a stride. They don't quite know how to get it all started and sort
Great
of
question.
get the momentum going, I guess is the question.
All right. So what that person needs to do is build what I call the roadmap in reverse, which is basically a deconstruction. So you ask yourself the following question. All right. I'm here right now where I stand today. Here's where I want to go. Okay. So there's a gap between these two places. Then you need to ask yourself, what most people do is they look at where they're at and they look at where they want to go and they say, how do I get there? Well, there's no easy answer to that question because if there
Mm-mm.
was, you would just be doing that already.
Correct.
All right. So instead, let's ask a different question. Let's look at where you want to go and ask yourself, in order for me to get here, what would need to be true? And this is the phrase you need to keep in your mind. What
Wow.
would need to be true? So let's use myself for an example. I got out of Division III college basketball. That school never produced a pro basketball player before me, hasn't produced one since me. I want to play pro basketball. Okay, what would need to be true for me to play pro basketball? I want to play overseas. I've never been out of the country. Nobody over there knows me. So what would have to be true? Somebody over there has to know that I exist. Okay, for someone to know that I exist, what would need to be true? Well, someone who knows them would need to know me. And I can't call people overseas. They might not even speak English, and I don't have their phone number. And this is before we had free nights and weekends. No, I can't call them. It costs too much. I'm a broke college kid, remember?
Hmm.
So let me connect with an agent because agents in sports are the middlemen, same way they are in the literary world, entertainment world. So if I can
Hmm.
get with an agent who's based in the USA, they know people overseas. So let me get an agent to represent me. Okay, but no agents know me. No agent was at my school watching the game. So what would need to be true for an agent to represent me? Well, then, Dre, you probably need some footage or somebody, or you need to go play somewhere to where an agent can see you and say, okay, this guy's actually pro material. Problem, I played Division III college ball. Like playing against other guys who are going to be selling insurance in 6 months doesn't prove that you're a pro player.
Fair enough.
I got to play against some pro level guys. This is not good. What I did is not good enough. So I found out I had a teammate who said, Dre, there's these things called exposure camps. Exposure camps like a job fair for an athlete. They're
Mm.
very popular now, very ubiquitous at all levels. Even eighth graders can go to exposure camps. They want to get
Wow.
recruited to a high school or a college. That's a new thing for the amateurs, but at the pro level, they've existed for a while. You go to one of these events when you think you're good enough to play pro, but right now you're not, or nobody knows you right now. You can
Mm.
improve your prospects by going to this event. It's like a casting call. So, Dre, you can go to one of these exposure camps. You show yourself well enough against 200 other guys who are pro level players. Now you play well against them. Now you have something of substance to show because your D3 career was not enough. So, okay, let me go to an exposure camp and play well. Now, key, got to play well. Can't just go. You got to do something. So
Yeah.
I went there and played well. Okay, now I have that. Now, what would need to be true? I still need an agent because no agent came up to me and said, Dre, I want to sign you. You're going to play for the Knicks. Let me sign you. That didn't
Yeah.
happen. I still need an agent, but now I have collateral. I didn't have collateral 2 weeks ago. I got collateral.
Interesting.
Now, okay, how do I get an agent to represent me? Okay, well, where can I find a basketball agent? Well, Google exists. This is 2005. I go on Google and look up literally basketball agent. If a basketball agent had an email address, I emailed them. If he had a phone number, I called him. Cold calls, cold emails, 60 of them. I reached out to 60. I got in touch with 20. 20 said, okay, show me what you have. I sent them the link to the scouting report, which is just somebody, a third party who's not me, saying this guy can play. And then the footage. Now, this is 2005. This is on a VHS tape. This is not YouTube. VHS. So those of you under the age of 30, ask your parents or you can Google it. The
That's right.
VHS tape. All right. So I went and made copies of the VHS tape because I had a double decker VCR at home. I just happened to have one. Again, under 30, look up VCR and VHS. You'll know what they are. So I made copies of that tape. And I would send the tape out to the agents who asked to see it. So I'm assuming my guess is here's the bet that I'm making. One of these 20 agents is going to look at the footage and look at the scouting report and say, I will represent you, and then they can get me a contract. This part I couldn't do myself. I had to bet that one of these agents can do it.
I see.
One of these agents reached back after he got the footage and said, I will represent you. He got me signed. That's how I got my first contract. So all I did was deconstruct what steps need to be taken to make this happen. And that's how I was able to do it.
That's incredible. I even just love the way that you just went through this whole thing about what needs to be true because it almost sounds like a system in and of itself because
It is.
every time you said that I could see like it's almost like one of those oh God, not masterminds, what do you call it? Mind maps where you
Yes.
start here and you say, What needs to be true? Well, this needs to happen. And now you're here. Okay, now I'm here. Now what needs to be true? You see,
Mm-hmm.
and you're just connecting these dots and really just answering the question each time until you arrive, more or less at the final destination of whatever the idea or the effort or initiative is. Listen, before I get into the sort of last segment, you still good for time for just a few?
Yes.
Okay. Before I get it, and I want to ask you about mental toughness. But before I do that, I'm curious to know about what was your swag on the court. What was your, what was Dre known for on the court?
When I first started playing at 14, the only thing I did was stand around the 3 point line and shoot jump shots because I
Oh,
couldn't dribble and I wasn't really athletic. I would just shoot shots. So I got a reputation in the neighborhood as he's an outside shooter. And then around age 16, I got introduced to this concept called plyometrics. You ever heard of it?
mm-mm.
Plyometrics is, I'm butchering your definition, but it's basically movements that involve different parts of the body to help with speed and explosiveness.
Oh,
So,
interesting. Yeah.
in other words, and how I found out about plyometrics because I used to read this basketball magazine called Slam Magazine back in the 90s. And they would have ads in the magazine. And it was one of the ads for this program called Air Alert. And Air Alert was a program that promised it would add 9 to 16 inches to your vertical jump and
Oh,
make you jump higher and be
oh
explosive.
goodness, 9 to 16.
Yeah,
Holy
and
crap!
it promised that it would do it. And the way it did it was through plyometrics.
I got
So
it.
when you do
Okay,
plyometrics, it's high volume exercises. So it's like jumping on your toes or doing
I
squats or
see.
explosive squats into a big jump. And it would just train your jumping muscles. I did Air Alert, and Air Alert was not lying. I became an athletic basketball player. So I went from being the
Wow.
guy who shot threes to the guy who could dunk. So that's what I turned into around age 16. So then athleticism was my calling card from age 18 all the way up through my college years. I was known as the athletic guy. It was like you want him to shoot jump shots because if he goes to the rim, you can't stop him. So I was more an athletic guy. So it was funny. So I had these two different
Yeah.
reputations. So throughout my career, first half of my career was more the athleticism, but as you get older, you can't just keep jumping over everybody.
Yeah.
So it
Yeah.
morphed back into being an outside shooter. By the end of my career, I was back being a shooter again. So it was the athlete and the shooter, but I was generally, Kevin, I was an all-around player. I always like to describe myself as any aspect of the game that you need help with. If you put me on the team, I can do it. You need somebody to play defense. You need a shooter. You need an athlete. You need a rebounder. You need somebody who doesn't need the ball but can still contribute. I can do that. I like to be the player who didn't have any holes in my game. So that's how I would describe
Man,
myself.
that's so powerful. I happen to coach tennis. I coach a middle school tennis team.
Hmm.
I just do it really just for the fun of it, but I'm a legit coach. I know how to coach the techniques and all those sorts of things. And
Right.
just listening to you talk about, being an outside shooter and then being able to dunk that, that's a metaphor in and of itself to be able to have the I'm not sure how to shape it, but to have those two tools
Mm.
that if you're on the outside, you're drawing people out, right? Which opens
Hmm.
up the inside. And if
Correct.
you're and if you're creating something inside, then it opens up the outside.
Right.
I don't know what I'm trying to say there, but I was just thinking about that. The same thing goes for tennis. When you push people back
Right.
beyond the baseline, you open up the
Mhm.
drop shot,
That's right.
or the
That's
whatever.
right.
That's incredible. Were you a good teammate? Were you a good team player?
Generally, I was. And it's funny that you say you were a tennis coach because I never got into tennis. There's a
Yeah.
big tennis court right next to the basketball court in the neighborhood I grew up in. Nobody played tennis. There was one guy, and he got a scholarship to FAMU to play tennis. Nobody else played tennis. And what's funny is, are you familiar with the big five personality traits, Kevin? Heard of them?
Um,
So, conscientiousness,
yes, yes,
agreeableness.
yes,
I am very much leaning on the disagreeable side. And entrepreneurs, we tend to be disagreeable.
yes.
We tend to be people who go our own way, and we're not really team people. We're more individual.
I actually have on my LinkedIn thing, the last thing on there is contrarian because I am a contrarian,
Yes, exactly. I
just
get accused of being that all the time. I think
okay.
I'm just being logical, but
Good
I
for
get
you.
yeah. So I am much higher on the disagreeable scale, and I should have played a solo sport. I should have played tennis. I think I would have been really, really good at tennis if it hadn't been basketball.
Yeah.
So because of tennis and basketball use a lot of the same skills: is range, agility, speed, power,
Hmm.
and conditioning. I
Yeah.
think I would have been really good at tennis had I played, but
Yeah.
unfortunately, I never played.
Never too
So
late.
right. That's that agility stuff is a young man's game.
I
I
got
beat
it.
up my legs playing basketball. So, to answer your question, which was tell me team player.
Yeah.
I was a good team player because I got my first job when I was 15 years of age. And I always tell people, you can't be a good boss till you learn how to be a good employee. You have to be a good soldier to be a good general. And I know how to be a good general, a good soldier.
I
I don't
love it.
like being a soldier, but I know how to be one. I can be a very good soldier. And that's why I was able to be a good team player because I always understood the concept of the team is not about just me personally and
Yeah.
how many points I score, is about does the team win? And if you're really good, not only will your team win, but also you'll look good. Like Michael Jordan, his teams won and he looked good. It's
Yeah.
not an either or, it's both.
Yeah.
So I understood that, even though at the same time, if I could start over, I can't say I wouldn't play basketball. I can't say that, but I
Understand.
would have tried tennis and saw maybe what would have happened.
Yeah, and of course, height these days is a big part of tennis anymore. I mean, players have
That's a
gotten
good point.
taller and taller, even like the
Right.
women. I mean, the average, I don't know what the average is, but many of the
Yeah,
women
they're
I know
usually
are
pretty tall.
5'10", 5'11", or something like this. Yeah.
Yes.
I think the reason why I asked you about the team player thing, because, I'm a solopreneur, if you will. I have people
Mm,
that do work for me, but I don't have any employees. But I still, I spent 20 years in the Air Force, so I know what that lifestyle's like. And whether you're working on a legit team, or in a scenario where, yeah, you might be the general, if you will, but you have people that work for you that do this, that, or the other.
hmm
I think it's incredibly important to be successful, to know how to freaking get along with people. And as I used to tell, and I still do, interns that come work for me, especially because they're master's degree, typically students.
mm,
And I tell them, listen, I'd love to say that I'm just here to contribute to your life, to learn how to be a consultant, coach, speaker, whatever it is, but
right.
that's not the truth. I need you as well. You're learning all the contemporary ideas,
hmm
and you have I typically would select from one graduate program. So I knew the students there were very high end. And so I
hmm
said, I know you're very smart. So, you know, I'll give you everything I got, but I'm asking you to come here because I want what you have too, and that is new ideas, fresh ideas. You're smart and all these things. I used to tell them, here's my rule of thumb: know when to step up and when to step back.
hmm
Know when to be the leader, know when to be the follower, the soldier, whatever you want to be. And that's just not just in basketball, but in life, correct?
Yes, absolutely. And it's a fingertip feel. It's touch
Mm,
is what we call that. And
touch.
in basketball, you call it touch.
Wow.
So you have to know when to throw the pass to a teammate like a baseball, when to throw it like a softball. Right? You can't, not a softball, but a
No, no,
kind of like
no.
a volleyball. Put some
Yeah.
touch on it because
Yeah.
if you throw it the same way every time, it's not always going to work. And it's funny. It's a good example I'll give you. I had a college basketball coach who I played for. I had a couple coaches in college. One of them, he didn't quite understand this. Now, he's a former NBA player. He's about 6'9". He was not that far removed from his career. And he came from I don't know how much you follow basketball. Do you remember Bobby Knight?
I
college
do.
basketball coach from
Yeah.
Indiana. Okay, so Bobby Knight was known as
Who,
a fire-breathing dragon type
I
of
mean,
coach. Yeah.
fire breathing like evil dragon.
Yes, exactly. And I think he had a military background
Oh,
and
did he really?
yeah,
I don't think
I
I knew
believe he
that.
did. I think he
Yeah.
did.
He was a, yeah.
And or at least he went to school. I don't think he was
Okay.
in the military, but he
Yeah.
went to army or something like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And Bobby Knight had a lot of the coaches who I played for, they were disciples of his coaching style. And this
Wow.
is the top-down style. Do as I say, not as I do.
Hmm.
Just listen to me. Don't question me. Don't second guess me. Whatever I
Hmm.
say is gospel. And a lot of the coaches from my era that I was playing for, they had this mindset. So these are
Yeah.
guys who were, I'm 43 years of age. These are guys who are probably in their 55 to 70 age range now today. These
Okay.
guys. And they all just worship at Bobby Knight's altar. And this coach, his coaching style was if you messed up in a game or in practice, he would just chew you out, cuss you out in front of the whole team. And he would basically relate to the rest of the team because they're all listening that the reason we're not winning this game right now is because this guy keeps messing up.
Holy crap.
And he would do that to every single player on the roster. If you
Uh,
messed up, he would do it to you. He would do it to
Okay.
everybody.
Fair enough.
And the thing is, I'm the type of person who could take that. Like when I played, I was a trash talking kind of guy. I would talk trash to the fans, the players. I could take the talk. You can say anything to me, it's not going to throw me off, and I'll say anything to you.
Yeah.
But you can't talk like that to everybody. You
Yeah.
can't do
No,
that
no,
to
no, no. You
everybody,
can't. You're right.
especially publicly in front of the whole
Yeah.
team,
Yeah.
because you're embarrassing them, and not everybody has the
Yeah.
thick enough skin to know that you said that not only to them but in front of everyone. Now they lose face. In the Asian culture, they call that losing face.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you do that to certain players, and they're not going to be good for the next 2 weeks.
Yeah.
But now we need them, and they're not going to be
Yeah.
any good because you just destroyed them in
Yeah.
front of everybody. You can't do that.
Yeah.
And that's, I'm saying that to say, when people don't have touch, they don't understand this.
That's
People
so
who
very
have
well said.
touch, they get it. They know, or I can cuss him out. But if this guy messes up, I'm not going to cuss him out, but I'll cuss him out to get a message to that guy. And a lot of
Yeah.
sports coaches do that. They'll yell at one player when they're really trying to talk to another
Yeah.
player.
Or yell at everybody knowing that you're really just talking to one person.
Right.
That makes a lot of sense. And I'm not I mean, Bobby Knight certainly had his issues. I still recognize he was a good coach,
Yeah, he's
but
a great coach.
but I don't know that, but in any event, that is what it is, you know. But so let's for the maybe just a little final segment here. That's a perfect transition into mental toughness.
Mhm.
I think this is my personal opinion that for whatever reason, people, I'll just speak for Americans, that have gotten quite a bit softer in these days.
Yes.
And I think it's been my observation, Dre, that it's harder for people to be mentally tough anymore. I don't know what, I mean, I could speculate about it, but what I really want to ask you is about mental toughness. What is it, and what do folks need to do to build a little bit more mental toughness?
And I concur with you on all of that. There's a book called
Okay.
The Coddling of the American Mind. Have you read it? Heard
I
it?
haven't read it, but I know what you're talking about. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. It explains this and explains the grassroots ground up where it came from.
Okay.
And mental toughness is your willingness and ability to remain disciplined and confident, even when doing all the right things, quote unquote, has not yet produced the desired
Oh,
outcome. All right.
wow.
That's what mental toughness is.
Love it. Didn't
And
expect all that.
yeah, well, the reason why it matters is because no matter how structured you are, no
Mhm.
matter how disciplined, no matter how confident, and no matter how talented, eventually something's not going to work. All
Mhm.
right, the link's not going to work. You send out an email for your launch, and the URLs are broken, and something's just going to go wrong. Guaranteed. I don't care who you are. Guaranteed, something's going to go wrong. Michael Jordan, you're playing in NBA Finals. You wake up with the flu from eating a bad pizza. All right, something's going to go wrong. What do you do then? That's really what it's about. And you'll probably notice if people are listening to this conversation that often it comes down to that. The third day is about that. Mental toughness is about that. Not what you do because you're talented and you're good and the sun is shining and everything's perfect. What do you do when it starts raining and you still have to do the job? Now, what do you do then, metaphorically speaking or literally?
Or
And
literally.
mental toughness, as the saying goes, strong people come from hard times. Hard times create strong people. Those strong people create good times. Good times create weak people. And right now in the United States of America, we're dealing in a hard
Ooh,
period because we got a lot of weak people. That-
agree.
That's what happened. And the American mind's been coddled, to borrow the title from that book,
That's right.
because you gotten a lot of people who they have been taught. that, and I think this goes generationally. My parents were born in the 60s, and they come from the do as I say, not as I do. If I tell you what to do, don't ask
Hmm.
me why. And there won't be another question or it's going to be a problem. My parents come from that era, right? And the kids, we were born in the 80s. We are of that era. And now we're starting to be the older guys, right? So
Yeah.
I'm over 40, so I'm old to these people in their 20s. And I'll say something along the lines of that, and they'll say, "Oh, well, that's the old way of doing things. The new way is, hey, we have to respect the feelings of these
Yeah.
people. We have to let people express what they feel. And if someone feels this way, then that's okay. Okay, yeah, you can feel whatever you want to feel, but you should be careful who you say it to, right? Because when I was
Hmm.
a kid, I could feel whatever I want about what my mom said, but I'd be
That's
careful not to say it, right? I'd go feel it in my bedroom,
yeah.
but I'm
Yeah.
not going to feel it in front of her.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
this is that's the era that we come from.
Yeah,
And
man.
what happens is every era tends to push back against the previous era. So whatever the previous generation did, the new generation says we're going to do something different than that, just because
Yeah.
it draws a line between me and you. All
Yeah.
right, you did this, mom, I'm going to do this.
Yeah.
All right, just for that reason. And that's what's happening nowadays. And when people come along with the quote unquote hard way, the hard mentality
Yeah.
way of doing things, they're looked at as you're like a
Yeah.
museum piece.
Yeah.
Doing it the old way, we need to do it this way, which
Yeah.
is more gentle, more kind, more
Yeah.
soft. And also because it's several factors. I mean, there's a reason why people have written whole books on this, is that social media and our ability to express ourselves through a phone from the comfort
Hmm.
of our own homes makes it very much easier to express
Hmm.
your thoughts and feelings moment by moment by moment.
Hmm. Good
Whereas
point.
in the 1992, if you felt something, it wasn't
Mm.
anybody to tell it to. You could write it in your diary, but nobody would ever
Yeah.
see it.
Yeah. That's right.
Nowadays, you can get on the internet and tell somebody, and you get 1,000 people agreeing with you. Like, oh, this must be true. Everybody else feels the same way. Back then, if you didn't like what was going on, you had to hold it in and you had to deal with it. You had to deal with
Hmm.
your own feelings. And to be clear, that may land some people in therapy, may land some people
Yeah.
feeling bad about themselves, but we all had to learn to
That's
deal.
right.
Like I had to learn how to deal. So all this mindset stuff that I came up with is because I had to learn how to deal with this stuff. All the disappointments and I'm mad at my parents about something, or I didn't make the basketball team, or some kid at school and me had an argument, or whatever was going on. I had to internalize and figure it out what to do about it. And again, in some ways, that could hurt some people. There are
Yeah.
people I know who ended up in therapy in my age bracket, ended up in therapy and they couldn't deal. I learned how to deal, and it became work on your game became that.
Yeah.
So this era that we're in now, you don't have to deal with anything if you don't want to.
Yeah.
That's what's making it solved. If you
Yeah.
don't want to deal with something, you can complain about it. You can start a movement about it. You can protest it. You can go and make the person who did it seem like a bad guy or a bad girl.
Yeah.
And everything that you say is a problem, no one's pointing the finger back at you and say, "Hey, what about you?"
That's
Nobody
right.
says that anymore. It's, "Oh, let's fix that so that you don't
That's
have to
right.
deal with this issue anymore."
That's so well said. And I think it's so important to those who are listening and want to better understand mental toughness and how to, because, you know, mental toughness, as you're suggesting here, belongs in every element of life. It doesn't mean that, it doesn't mean that you shouldn't have feelings, doesn't mean you shouldn't
Right.
cry. The question becomes, can you get back up?
Right.
And do you need 10 people to come pick you up and say it's going to be okay?
Right.
Sometimes that's good. I tell people, man, when you've lost a loved one or you really hurt, and let people love on you.
Mhm.
But to your point, you have to figure out how to be mentally tough, and that typically only happens when you're in tough times. You just said it.
That's right.
There's an old sailor statement that good sailors are made in tough. No, good sailors are not made in calm waters.
That's right.
And it's really the thing. Wow, I'm not going to say that I'm surprised how amazing you are and how amazing this conversation was, but I will say that it exceeded my expectations. I'd already listened to plenty of your podcasts and I knew, but you're deep, my friend, and
No,
I
thank you, Kevin.
appreciate that a lot. I mean, that just
Appreciate it.
represents a lot of work and a lot of reading and a lot of curiosity. And by the way, there's those are the things that we talked about that folks need to do. So, where can people find you, man? Take as much time as you'd like to tell us about what you do, because I do want to know what's on the horizons for Dre Baldwin now. Is there anything new happening? And then tell people where they can find you, your courses, whatever it is you'd like to say. I'm game.
Sure. Well, and one last thing I didn't even tie up that answer about mental toughness is
Okay,
that
please.
you said it, is that to be mentally tough, you got to go through tough things.
Yeah,
You can't be mentally tough going through easy things. You got to be in tough situations. And sometimes life will give you a tough situation, and other times you have to put yourself in a tough situation. So, again, you sign up for a CrossFit class, as you know it's going to kick your ass. You do it anyway. You get in a boxing gym, you know you're going to get beat up. You do it anyway. So, it's putting yourself in tough situations, and we call that there's a word eustress. So there's distress, there's eustress. That's the good.
you
Some
stress.
people
Yeah.
call it hormetic stress. The biohackers call it hormetic stress. Things
Mm,
that make you better. But anyway, to answer your question, you mentioned the third day. Can I share the book?
please do.
Yeah, so the third day, the decision that separates the pros from the amateurs. We'll give people a free copy of this. We'll physically ship you a copy. Just go to thirddaybook.com, just the title, third day and the word book.com. Just cover the shipping. We'll send you a free copy of that book. As far as our other stuff, the other thing is Work on Your Game University. That's where we do our coaching and
Mm,
such. And I got 30 domain
mm.
names, so I'm not going to list everything. But the other thing that I would say, the biggest thing I'm excited about right now, Kevin, is twofold. Number one is making Work on Your Game into that system in the McDonald's realm. Because right now, the most important engine of the Work on Your Game world is Dre Baldwin. But the thing is, just like with basketball, you can't run and jump forever, right? So it's turning Work on Your Game more into a system. We have a system, but it's taking it, making it more into a system and taking me more out of the picture and the system more to the front. Is I'm trying to put the system in the driver's seat, put me in the passenger seat, or put me in the
Love
trunk.
that.
Put me in the trunk of the car. Is what we're trying to do right now, metaphorically, is make Work on Your Game more to that system that we can get that out to bigger companies, not just individuals, but to companies to where they can take Work on Your Game and this is what you get. Dre Baldwin just happens to be a name. Who?
And I'll be honest with you.
Yeah.
I've seen your website and about the system, and I'm not
Hmm.
going to say what it is, but it's very affordable. I think folks really need to look at that and building systems. I mean, that's really cool.
Yeah, well, thank you. So that's the number one biggest thing. The second thing is artificial intelligence. I mean, who isn't
Hmm.
interested in that? So the next thing is
Yeah,
AI. And
yeah.
I think AI is going to surprise people by how quickly it becomes what it's going to become. I think computing power is getting better. And there's going to come a time, Kevin, when 5 years from now, maybe me and you'll be doing another interview, but it'll be AI Kevin and AI Dre just having a conversation
Yeah. Have your
about
people
things that
call
neither one of
my
us ever
people.
said.
Have your robot call my robot.
Yeah, and it's going to feel like a real conversation. Like
Yeah,
I think that's coming
yeah.
within, I don't know, 5 years, but within 15, I think it's coming.
I think
And
you're right. I think 5 years it'll be around. There's no question in
yeah,
my mind. I mean, it's just I pay a lot of attention to AI
yeah.
and the speed at which it's growing. I mean, even people that are deep into that world are surprised how fast it's moving.
Right. So that, and I mean, all the things AI can do to where,
Yeah.
I mean, it can do coaching calls for us. I think that's coming
Hmm.
to where you'll have a bot that you can license out and someone can just hire your bot to be their coach. And you don't have to coach anybody. You have 1,000 coaching clients. So you can't farm out 1,000 hours of time,
Yeah.
but you can farm out your bot to 1,000 different
Yeah.
people. It's trained on everything you say, everything you know, all your books.
Yeah.
And I think that's coming. And the good thing is it'll be low enough cost because of computing power that everyone can access it. So I think what AI is going to do, amongst a million other things, Kevin, is going to be a boon for the producers.
Yeah.
The producers who are producing right now, the
Yeah.
opportunities are going to be
Yeah.
endless for the producers. So that's what I'm most excited about right now.
I think you're right, man. I'm going to try to hide this episode from my wife though, because I could just think she's going to have this idea. She said, maybe I'll just get him a bot for his birthday and quit bugging me. And you know,
As long as they can make dinner and clean the bathroom.
exactly. I mean, just
Yeah.
oh Lord have mercy. So,
Right.
well, listen, my goodness, what a pleasure it was to have you, Dre. What a just a terrific conversation. I get the sense that you're a really good man as well, on top of being smart and
Thank you.
ambitious and doing great things. So I have a lot of appreciation for good people who are doing good things.
Well, much appreciated. I appreciate you sharing your platform, and this has been a great conversation. So I'm going to listen back to this myself.
I can't wait to put it out. So
Yeah,
thank you so much, Dre Baldwin, and look forward to staying in touch with you. I'd love to do that.
absolutely. Let's do it.
Okay. Thank
Thank
you
you.
so much.
Thank you, Kevin.